everybody, my name's Cheryl. For those that are joining for the first time and those that have come back to our channel, I'm really happy to see you all again. Well, today I thought I would do something a little different, and I know in one of my videos I had talked a little bit about the fact that I'm retired. My husband and I are both retired completely. We are basically homebodies now. And although that's going to change here real soon, we're waiting to get our camper van, and then we are going to be hitting the road. And for those of you that don't know this, we plan on taking you with us on our trips that we take. But since we're still here at home, I thought I would talk a little bit about how lucky I am to have had the childhood that I had. I feel really sorry for the young kids today, although they don't realize the things that they're missing. But I grew up in the 60s. You know, I was born in 59, and my really young childhood years were in the 60s. And I remember I lived in California, a little place called Atwater. My dad was in the military. And I remember the simple life that we had, but yet I didn't want for anything. I had everything I wanted, everything I needed. I never worried about anything. My parents always took care of us, took care of the things that we needed, never thought about, going without anything. But I know looking back, we had really very little. I was one of 4 siblings. We had 5 children in our family, but my little brother, he had died shortly after birth. So growing up, I had 2 brothers and a sister. And I remember, things that in my childhood, things that we would do, things that we would get. And one of the memories that I have is I remember my dad on Saturdays, we would line up and he would give us each a nickel. And we would go to the local convenience store. It was called, it's funny how you remember this, but I'm trying to remember now. I can't remember now. I had it with me and now I forgot it. But anyway, it was a little convenience store. It was probably like 4 or 5 blocks away from our house. And I remember my siblings and I walking to the store and spending our nickel. And I remember all the candy you could get for a nickel, but I, in particular, remember getting a candy bar. I used to get a Mounds candy bar for a nickel. And it was such a simple time, walking to the store and just being as happy as ever to have this shiny nickel in our pocket to go to the store and buy a candy bar. I mean, I just remember that so well. I had friends that had a lot more than I had. I had one friend in particular that lived right next door, and she was an only child. And I mean, she had everything she ever wanted. I mean, a TV in her room, and that was a big thing in the 60s. I didn't have a lot, but what I had, I was happy to have. I mean, I don't really remember thinking, I don't have anything to do. I always had something to do. We were outside most of the time playing things like kick the can. I don't know if any of you watching this remember that. If you do, put it down in the comments section. Also, I'd be really interested to hear some of the different games and things that you used to do when you were outside playing. But we hardly spent any time indoors. I mean, it was always outside. I know one of the things that we had in our house was an above ground pool, and it was a pretty good size pool. And I remember spending most of our days outside, and we didn't worry about sunscreen or any of that stuff. I mean, those things were never a worry, and we just spent all day out there. And I think mainly because the sun wasn't as strong back then as it is today, but used to ride bikes everywhere, and used to go to the pond and catch tadpoles and watch them grow into frogs. And it just, I mean, the simplest things just made us so happy. And in our house that we lived in, we had 6 people, 4 kids and, 2 adults. And I remember we lived in a 1,200 square foot house which was during that time frame, I think that was actually a pretty good size house. We had one bath for all of us. And we had that time frame, I remember we had a 2-stall garage, which was very uncommon and really not needed because we only had one car. My mother stayed at home with us kids, took care of us, had dinners ready for us. I mean, she was the homemaker, and my father was the one that went out every day. So it was just a really laid back childhood. We did take some trips. A lot of it was road trips. We didn't spend, on our trips, I can remember, we didn't really spend a lot of money. We drive places. I remember because we lived in California, we'd go up to Yosemite, which was a few hours away from where we lived. And we would drive up to Yosemite and spend time in the park and, have a picnic and just hike and things like that. We didn't have recreational type things. Like we didn't have boats and campers and things like that. However, I do remember a time that my parents wanted to take us to Disneyland, and I'm sure they were thinking, well, that's an expensive adventure for the whole family to do. How are we going to get around this? And I remember my dad making a trade with someone who had one of those campers that you put over a truck. It's attached to the truck, and you had like bunk beds at the top, and then there was a table inside the camper that turned into a bed. And I can remember traveling in that, going to Disneyland from Atwater. So it was quite a ride, and that's where we spent the night. We didn't stay in hotels or anything like that. And in exchange, that family that loaned us the camper got to swim in our pool the whole time that we were gone. So that was kind of the exchange. And I remember, that happening. That's what we did. I mean, I can remember going with my mother to the grocery store, and, all us kids were in tow because she didn't have babysitters for us. She took us everywhere she went. And I can remember going in through the grocery store, and I remember the old cash registers where they had little buttons and they go boop, 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 boop. And they, and then they'd bring the item down, and a big family of 6 could eat for like $55. I mean, the money went so much again, I know the rate of money was a lot different then too, the wages and everything were different. But I can remember not wanting for anything. If we didn't have it, we pretended. We did a lot of pretend things, jump rope was so easy. If you didn't have a store-bought jump rope, you made a jump rope out of a rope. I mean, you just did what you could. You did whatever needed to be done to have fun. And you played outside. And, TV, we didn't watch a lot of TV. First of all, there wasn't a lot of TV. I mean, I think there were 3 channels. And TV ended like at midnight, and then you'd get the Star Spangled Banner that would play, and then you shut off the TV. And I don't know if any of you remember this, but the TV would go black, but before it went black, it would just go blue, and it'd be a little dot, and then it'd just go away. And I can remember, the first time we got a colored TV and seeing the peacock in color. I remember that, for the first time seeing the color and how crazy that was. We'd go to a movie theater and we'd spend 50 cents on a ticket to go to see a movie. I mean, and movies, if we went to the movies, it wasn't a lot. Very seldom would we go, but when we did, it wasn't that, I guess 50 cents back then was a lot of money, but when you look at it now, it wasn't a lot. But what I'm trying to say is we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of family time. We played games, and we went outside and we played together as my siblings. We played together, and my friends, and we were outside. We were walking around and going to each other's houses and doing different things, but we never hardly ever spent time inside the house, mainly because I lived in a climate that was really nice. We didn't have really bad weather, so we didn't have to be inside. But and I don't ever remember worrying about somebody snatching us up and people coming after us, kid being kidnapped or anything like that. Although I'm sure it happened, you just didn't hear about it as much. And I don't know to what to what extent it happened either, but I always felt relatively safe where I was at, and not having to worry and look behind my back to see if anybody was chasing me or following me or anything like that. I never really worried about those things. So we walked to school every day. I can remember, we walked maybe 6-7 blocks together with my siblings in tow. I mean, we just walked to school and walked back. We waited for each other and we'd walk back from school to home. And then I remember going inside at the end of the school day and getting a little snack, a little treat when we got in the door. And then we were back outside playing until it was time to come in for supper and do homework and things like that. And to be honest with you, when I was a kid, I don't really remember a lot of homework. It was just a different time, and it was a simple time. And I look at kids today and I think, they're on their phones and they're, watching TV, and there's, not one TV in a house, but there's 5 TVs in a house now, and computers everywhere and technology everywhere. And I remember in our house, we only had one TV and, 3 stations to watch. It was just a simpler time. And at the time, I didn't realize how lucky we were, to have those memories, to be able to have those memories of that time, because it's just, everything's gotten so complicated nowadays. And I'm sure, what's the saying? You don't miss what you never had. So I guess kids today don't really miss it. But I know if I was to live as a child now and know what I know, the way I grew up way back when, I would miss those times. I would much rather live in that time than in this time, where the kids have, all their technologies, and I don't know. It's just not something for me. And the other thing I remember is when we were in the car, we would, seatbelts weren't a thing. I mean, people didn't have seatbelts. Later on they did, but when I was real little, I don't remember having to wear seatbelts. That probably wasn't a good thing, but I remember that when we were in the car, we talked. I mean, that's where we had family time and we visited and things like that. We listened to the radio and stuff, but we had a lot of conversations and things like that. We played road games and things like that. But today, I mean, it's like everyone's on their phone, or they have those tablets that they can watch movies, and no one's really talking. They get in the car and everybody is like in their own little space in a car. So it was just, and I'm sure that some of you that are listening to this can remember and probably have stories, a lot of different stories about what their childhood was like. And I think if you lived in the 60s, you can probably relate to what I'm saying, just how lucky we were, how great it was. And it really was. So that's all I really had for today. I was just at home thinking about it, thinking about how lucky, and how different it was when I was growing up to what it is today, and just being thankful that I was able to experience it. And I guess I just wanted to get on here and share it and just get everybody else that maybe has lived in that time to think about some of the good times that they had at that time. Well, thank you for joining. I hope that you will come back to our channel again. If you did like this content, please subscribe, and I will talk to you later. Bye. Thanks for watching.